all week we've been talking about this kind of federal takeover, so to speak, supporting the D.C. police force. The Trump administration, of course, has been talking a lot more now about Chicago. So I want to show you something. The U.S. Navy base near Chicago, where federal forces could launch this new immigration operation in the city. CNN has learned it could happen by the end of next week. The city has long been a target for top Trump administration officials.
Chicago still has a crime problem. So President Trump, again, made a promise to American people, we'll make this country safe again. So Chicago has a crime problem. That's why President Trump's thinking about it.
All right, so if the president is looking for another state to send National Guard, California Governor Gavin Newsom has some ideas.
Just look at the murder rate. That's nearly 4 times higher than California's in Louisiana. It's Speaker Johnson. Perhaps the president could deploy the National Guard in every corner of Mississippi. It's the murder rate's out of control there. Carnage. We can talk about the carnage in Arkansas, again, one of the top 10 murder states in America. 2.6 times greater than San Francisco. Again, these are just not just observations, they're stone-cold facts.
They're not just observations, they're printouts. So obviously this is something that they're going to be leaning into. And just for a few facts, we have got the violent crime stats for 2024. You can see for yourself some of the cities on that list: Memphis, Detroit, Baltimore, which people have talked about, but also Cleveland and Kansas City. What's interesting to me is there are places that are sending their National Guard to D.C. Couldn't they just keep their National Guard where it is and do this whole exercise themselves?
Well, I think the American people understand that crime, and Donald Trump has tapped into this in recent weeks, is a life and death issue for
But the dynamic of being like red state,
Sure.
National Guard here, blue state, like civilian population, like there's something about it that feels like it's creating unnecessarily a divisive feeling.
Well, Gavin Newsom, good example of this. You didn't play the clip, buddy, but he also announced yesterday that he's surging in areas of California where he needs to address a crime problem. So as we've seen Gavin Newsom copy President Trump in terms of his messaging and style on Truth Social, he's also mimicking some of the policies, because I think if you're a political leader right now and crime is perceived as a problem in big cities, yes, you need to respond to those challenges.
The difference is, Rob, I don't think anyone is anti-fighting or dealing with crime.
Then why haven't they done it?
I think the difference is this president wants to put color on crime. He wants to politicize crime, i.e. picking at or nagging at cities that have high African-American populations or with African-American mayors. Because when in times of crisis, as Donald Trump is with his poll numbers and his base, he tends to lean on certain things: race, crime, public safety, immigration, and patriotism. That's been his pattern, practice, and history as an elected official, i.e. President of the United States. So here he is going back to his comfort zone. If Trump cared really about crime in D.C., why not meet with the mayor or other mayors around the country, come up with a solution like President Biden did with the Safer in Communities Act, which is why violent crimes are coming down in cities, but he did not do that.
We are following breaking news this morning. President Trump has revoked Secret Service protection for former Vice President Kamala Harris. It comes despite former President Biden in January extending Harris's protection to 18 months. This move is just the latest removal of protection by President Trump, including his former National Security Advisor, John Bolton, his former Secretary of State, Mike Pompeo, as well as Biden's 2 adult children, Hunter and Ashley. And joining us now to discuss this and more is Maura Gillespie, former advisor to Speaker John Boehner, and former New York Democratic Congressman and senior advisor for Vote Vets, Max Rose. Maura, what do you make of this move by the president and the timing of it? Could it have anything to do with the former vice president's book tour coming up?
Well, it probably does, but I also don't think that the American people should necessarily be on the hook for her security during a book tour that's a private matter. I mean, she's doing it. The book tour is a funding tool for herself, more or less. I mean, she's not working in capacity for the American government anymore. So when you think about what American taxpayers are paying for, why should they pay for it beyond the 6 month, which is the protocol? I think then it also should go to Trump and Pence and Vance should remember that in 4 years this time, their security will be ending just around the same time. If it's a 6-month, well, not for Trump, but for Vance, it should be ending as well. So if we're going to stick with protocol, then 6 months it is. I also think that private security is an important factor that some people, like the Biden family, was able to afford. Ashley and Hunter Biden can afford private security if they feel like they need it. It doesn't necessarily always extend to children.
So what do you think about this? How do you see it, Max?
I mean, of course, if you look at it within just a silo, vice presidents normally lose their protective detail after 6 months. I can understand that. That's not what's going on here. For 4 years, Vice President Biden authorized protection for Mike Pompeo, an individual who actively campaigned against Joe Biden, an individual that spoke at the Republican National Convention against Joe Biden, but he knew that the threats against him were legitimate. This was a man in an administration that always put doing the right thing above politics. The Trump administration is exactly the opposite. They'll go after their political enemies with their own party, and certainly will go after their political enemies across the aisle and use any tool at their disposal, even if it put people's lives at risk and their families.
So this is just one of the kind of latest controversial moves we've seen by this president. And now California Governor Gavin Newsom is releasing a statement saying, quote, "The safety of our public officials should never be subject to erratic, vindictive political impulses." He separately had this warning about President Trump for the American people.
Wake up. We're losing this country in real time. This is not bloviation. This is not exaggeration. It's happening. People actually think this guy's serious about having another election. You think he's joking about 2028?
You think he's going to run again?
Don't give me. You don't. Who spends $200 million on a ballroom at their home and then leaves?
Maura, what are your thoughts on Newsom's strategy here and how he's approaching all of this? Will it land?
I'm not an alarmist by any means. I've not been one that's, jumping ahead of things to say, oh, he's destroying the country, the president, all these things. I do think there are some things that the Trump administration has done and that Trump himself is doing that may be hard for us to dial back from. The amount of executive overreach, something that Republicans should be looking at and saying, how are we going to claw that back when we no longer have power? You may not be able to. And so I do think that there are genuine concerns of what Newsom is saying may actually resonate with people who recognize that the Trump's interviews where he talks about a third term isn't just a joke. It is not very funny. And when you see the redistricting planning and some of the ways that he goes about things, you're wondering, how will he? We barely got him out of the White House the first time. He did not want to leave. January 6th committee talked about staffers who heard him say, who's actually going to make me leave here? So what happens in 3.5 years from now? Will he leave? And so I think that Newsom's bringing up a concern that a lot of people probably haven't said out loud, but they're wondering.
Congressman Rose, we've talked a lot about how do Democrats counter some of these moves by the president. Governor Newsom is also warning that President Trump's trying to use the immigration agents and federal authorities like ICE as his own personal police force. Sure. Now, Newsom is countering, though, by deploying state police to other cities at a time when the president is threatening to deploy the National Guard to other cities to combat crime. At least, of course, Newsom's talking about deploying this to other cities in California. Is that a move you think we'll see more of by Democrats? Because the president's trying to suggest that Democrats are soft on crime?
It's a move we've traditionally seen.
California Governor Gavin Newsom says if President Trump has his way, there may not be an election in 2028. Newsom delivered that stark outlook at Politico's The California Agenda Sacramento Summit on Wednesday, where he warned that the country could soon slide into authoritarianism. Take a look.
I have 24 Trump 2028 hats. His folks keep sending me.
And you think he's going to run again?
Don't give me. Who spends $200 million on a ballroom at their home and then leaves the house? So this is serious, guys. This is serious.
So it'll be Newsom Trump in 28.
No. This guy doesn't believe in free, fair elections. He tried to wreck this country. Were you there, January 6th? He tried to light democracy on fire. He dialed for 11, almost 12,000 votes. Now he's doing it in plain sight.
Joining us now, senior writer for The Dispatch, David Drucker, and Peter Baker and Rick Wilson have been very patient. Thank you guys for staying with us. David, how seriously should we be taking this warning? Is this a possibility?
Well, I mean, anything's a possibility with Trump, but I don't take this seriously. The president's constitutionally barred from running for a third term. States run elections. Contrary to what he says, states are not agents of the federal government. And so he can't force any state to put him on the ballot in 2028. But the president loves to live rent-free in every Democrat's head if it's possible. And I think that, if you're Gavin Newsom, you're not necessarily doing that. But what you are doing is ginning up support from the Democratic base as you look ahead to the next election and beyond. And it's a good way to garner attention. Now, this is not in any way to downplay Trump, his power grabs, his stretching the bounds of executive authority, and what he would do if he could, if he found out that actually the 22nd Amendment doesn't apply to you. I mean, he would run in perpetuity. But I think we need to be careful about how we talk about this and understand what's possible and what is hyperbole that the president is happy to push to keep voters away from other issues that are more prone to hurt him politically, like the economy, like inflation, like his trade agenda.
So, Rick, to David's point, the president has made comments about wanting to hang on to power in the past and stay there beyond his term. He's also shown world leaders, as you heard there, the Trump 2028 hats in the White House gift shop. But is this serious, or is this trolling the Democrats, as David kind of alluded to? Are they taking the bait here? Are Democrats just falling down the rabbit hole that Trump set out for them?
Let's be very clear. Newsom is not above criticism. I've seen some say you're not allowed to criticize him because, according to betting markets, he's the #1 favorite to be the next nominee. And 3 years out from the next election, you're not allowed to criticize the future nominee. I don't think that's reasonable. Moderates are going to continue to criticize AOC. Progressives are going to continue to criticize Newsom. The point is, though, there's a reason why in a lot of these polls, Newsom and AOC are near the top. And it's because whether one's a moderate and one's a progressive, they both hate Donald Trump, make their hate of Donald Trump and the Republicans extremely clear and explicit. They're shying away from the traditional, and not to cast it, Biden, Pelosi, old school, we need a strong Republican Party because when there's a strong Republican Party, democracy works type discourse. And they're saying, no, these are monsters. They're either with Trump or they enable him, and we're going to crush him. We're going to crush him. People want a fighter. And whether that fighter is a progressive or a moderate, you can see why there's popularity for both of those camps. There's a reason why in some places they like Mamdani and Newsom. They have very different policies, but they both are fighters, right? And so that's the lesson going forward. People want you to take on Donald Trump. They don't want the traditional, let's do bipartisanship type stuff. They want a Democratic Party that will hate Republicans as much as Republicans hate Democrats. And Newsom is offering that to people.